Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you locally by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destination all season long. Wild Wild West, Tropicana, Harrah's Resort, Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. I'm Mike Gill. Andrew DiCecco from the Inside the Birds podcast going to join us in just a minute here as Football at 4 takes a look at the Eagles and the Raiders as they get ready to play this Sunday in Vegas for the first time. I'm imagining a lot of Eagle. Anybody in the audience listening right now going to Vegas for the game? Send us a text, 609-403-0973. Interested to see how many people in our listening audience are heading out to Vegas for the game. Got a lot to get into with Andrew DiCecco on how this game shakes out on Sunday with the Eagles back in action. You know, the Eagles 2-4. Can they make the playoffs? Go to 97.3ESPN.com. There's one big reason why they may be able to make the playoffs, and they have the weakest schedule left in the NFL. From this point forward, they have the weakest schedule left in the league. The most difficult stretch. They faced 6 teams that were a combined 20-14 over the first couple of weeks of the season, including the past two, the 2 teams that made the Super Bowl last year. So they got that going for them. But to get there, they really need to make a lot of changes and tighten some things up. And that's where we bring Andrew DiCecco in during Football at 4. Andrew, what's going on, man?
I'm doing well. I'm trying to make sense of all this Sixers drama that's unfolding.
Like, even the Football at 4 is scratching their head at the Ben Simmons drama that is happening. Not as much drama going on the Eagles side of things, but there is a couple of things. They did trade Zach Ertz since we last talked, so I want to start there with you and how you think that will possibly change the offense. Do you think we'll see a change in the offense? Does Goddard get more burn in the offense? Do you think they'll have more stuff designed for him now that they don't have to try to share playing time between the 2 tight ends?
Well, on the surface, it looks like you're going to see a lot more Dallas Goedert. However, he still has yet to be implemented into the offense consistently. I think that the Eagles really need to find a way to utilize him out wide, to give them a physical contested catch specialist on the outside, and utilize him over the middle. I mean, they so desperately need a physical passing option or receiving option in the passing game, because they have a lot of speedy finesse guys. But I mean, it's just a very finesse team on paper, and I think Dallas Goedert provides a much more physical presence, which they so desperately need.
Now, when you throw the ball to the tight end, a lot of times young quarterbacks, Andrew, they like the tight end. It's like a security blanket. It's like a young quarterback's best friend. Hey, I can't see stuff down the field. I'll just dump it off. Why has that not been the case so much for Jalen Hurts?
Well, it's funny, Mike, because that was an area that you wanted to see Jalen improve in over the summer, and he did. He did go over the middle, utilizing Greg Ward and Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz in training camp. But then when the regular season started, that area of the field was not being utilized. And there was guys running free, and he was, rolling out to his right and throwing outside the numbers. And that seems to be his comfort level. I don't know if he's not a very big guy. I don't know if Jalen doesn't really doesn't trust his arm or what he's seeing over the middle. But there are opportunities to really exploit some of these defenses. I mean, Kansas City you saw that they opened with Dallas Goedert a little bit in that Kansas City game, and there was an opportunity really to take advantage of a pedestrian linebacking core. I mean, Dallas as well. There's opportunities there to really get these tight ends involved and even your third receiver. And he's just not doing it for whatever reason. I just don't think he looks very comfortable, and he is so quick to look off that read and sort of escape the pocket and go to what he's comfortable with, which is outside the numbers.
Yeah.
Hopefully now you start to see a little bit more of a balanced offense now that you have your top tight end and Dallas Goedert, and you don't have to worry about sort of satisfying two different players and making sure they're all getting their targets and things of that nature.
Shane Steichen was asked today, he said obviously Goddard's role will probably pick up a little bit more. And then there was a follow-up saying, hey, we've never really seen him as the number one guy for an extended period of time. He said, I think Dallas will do a heck of a job. He's explosive. He's got really good hands. He's strong. He's powerful. He's good in the run game. So really excited about Dallas moving forward here. So they're saying all the right things. So what you just kind of talked about, is the game plan not including Goddard, or is Hurts not utilizing the tight ends?
Well, it's funny that Shane Steichen, listed all those traits that he has. We all knew that, which is why we're all puzzled that he's not more consistently utilized in the offense and made him more prominently featured. So, I mean, they said all the right things. You said that perfectly, Mike. But let's see if they follow that up with action. Because like I said, there's been a lot of instances throughout the games where Goddard's running free. You're getting him matched up on a linebacker that he's clearly going to win that matchup. And there, for whatever reason, whether it be game plan or Jalen Hurts not really being comfortable throwing the ball over the middle of the field, it just has nothing's really materialized in that regard. So now we need to see the plan put into action. Because now that they have Goddard, they got to find a way to utilize him. Because now they need to figure out if he's going to be their tight end of the future, right? I mean, that's what they really needed to determine. And they have like you mentioned, that they have a pretty favorable schedule coming up here, and now is a good opportunity to turn them loose and see what you have.
Yeah, and I would ask you, Andrew. Obviously, you have a young quarterback, but do you have the pieces around him that can help make a young quarterback successful if the play calling's better? Like, if you're going to dump all this in his lap, it's hard to imagine that he is at the level of a player that can execute this particular offense. But if you had a more traditional offense and the play calling was designed better to kind of balance out, do they have enough around him that they could be successful?
And I'm glad you mentioned that. You led that, Mike, because Jalen Hurts is being asked to do an awful lot for such a young player. And I really do think that while there's certain throws that he's just not hitting, and he's too quick to escape the pocket at the first sense of pressure, and he doesn't look off his first read, the coaching staff needs to do a better job of putting him in position to be successful and accenting what he is good at, game plan on his strengths, right? But to answer your question, yes, they have a number of pieces there. You have two running backs that complement each other quite well in Miles Sanders and Kenny Gainwell. They can help in the receiving game, run the football to take the pressure off of Jalen when it looks like he's clearly struggling, and things start to snowball. I mean, run the football. You also have an explosive tight end in Dallas Goedert. You had a guy in Zach Ertz who really is a safety valve for quarterbacks, makes life a lot easier for them. I thought he could have been utilized even more so than he was. But then when you look at the receiving core, Mike, I really think that they need a veteran presence. They lack a big-bodied receiver that can go over the middle and win those slant routes and those contested catch situations. They have a guy in Devontae Smith who can get open. He's good release off the line, very proficient route runner. Quez Watkins is a good vertical threat, and I think that he's really shown improvement at working all three levels of the field. But you really do need a guy who is of the mold of a J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. He's just a non-entity on offense. Yeah. But you need someone who is that 6'2", 6'3", is going to outmuscle some of these corners and help your quarterback when he could just loft it up there and allow him to go up and make a play on the football. So I think that while many of the pieces are favorable for a young quarterback, you would like to see a veteran receiver or a bigger-bodied guy.
Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4 from the InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast, of course, bringing you Football at 4. Is this a meaningful stat at all that Miles Sanders has rushed for positive yards on 98% of his attempts? Is that just showing you how little they've run the ball, or is that showing you that they're not utilizing him enough?
Well, they're showing that they're not utilizing him enough. I mean, you saw last night was a great example, right? I mean, you saw Derrick Henry, and I'm not comparing Derrick Henry to Miles Sanders, but the first couple of carries, the Buffalo Bills defense was very stout against Derrick Henry. He wasn't getting much yards, but the Titans, they stuck with their formula, their winning formula, and they continued to pound the rock, and you saw positive things start to happen. That's what the Eagles really need to do. That's what I thought that they should have done to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Obviously, they are a very stout run defense, but you have to keep going and keep trying because eventually you're going to break something. And Miles Sanders has shown in his limited opportunities that he can get positive yards in chunks, and you saw last season, and again in a limited sample size, that he's able to take a play and find the crease and create big plays. And they really need to do that, especially when your quarterback is off the mark and struggling. You have to find a way to get him settled into the game, and you have two running backs that can help in that regard, and they need to do that.
Andrew, obviously, the offensive line, you're going to get Lane Johnson back. I would imagine he's going to play right tackle, and Mailata's going to go back to left tackle here. So you got Mailata, Dickerson, Kelsey, Jack Driscoll, and Lane Johnson. That's an offensive line that you can win with and run the ball with, isn't it?
It sure is. Yeah, I mean, that's the best option, the best configuration of what they have right now. And, I mean, it doesn't leave them limited or hamstrung in any way. I mean, I think that you need to try and run the football against the Raiders this weekend because, listen, they're a team that could flip the switch on and off. Obviously, a couple of weeks ago they had a down week. And when you thought that they were going to have another down week after the fallout of everything that's going on over there, they really took it to the Denver Broncos. So I mean, you cannot sleep on this team. You don't want to give them extra time on the field. You want to kind of have some of these methodical drives, and that begins with running the football, especially when your quarterback has been off the mark the past couple of weeks. So I think that offensive line gives them the best chance to win. And it's great to see Lane Johnson back, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, last year, Andrew, we would talk about, look, the offensive line had all these different incarnations and were a disaster for the most part. That hasn't been the case. Like, with all the changes they've had in the line, has the line been an issue?
Outside of, Andre Dillard looked fairly good up until last Thursday.
He got whipped
but
Thursday.
You know what? Yeah, Thursday was not his finest hour, but I will say that by and large, Mike, the offensive line has really stood strong, and that's sort of a byproduct of a lot of these guys having to play a lot of snaps last year. In the case of Jack Driscoll and Andre Dillard he didn't play last year, but he played a decent amount as a rookie. So these guys weren't necessarily being just thrown in there. They have some experience. So that certainly helps. And then Landon Dickerson is someone who has really progressed each week, and I'm very encouraged with what I've seen from him. He looks very comfortable there at the left guard spot. But yeah, I mean, they really have held up strong in Lane's absence, and now they get their strongest lineup back outside of obviously Brandon Brooks there at right guard. But I mean, yeah, they have to find a way to move the football consistently against the Raiders.
Yep, and we will obviously break down the consistency in moving the ball against the Raiders when Andrew's back on Thursday's edition of Football at 4. And, let's take a look at some of the defensive things. I talked about this yesterday with Moshe. I want to get your opinion. When a team has a bye, they don't have a bye till the 12th week of the year, but you play Thursday night, you get a chance to self-scout and kind of reevaluate things with these 3 extra days. Do you anticipate or would you recommend any changes specifically, I guess, on the defensive side of the ball? I don't know that there's any changes you would really make offensively. I don't think there's anybody that deserves to get benched or look to be benched. But is John Gannon looking at his defense and thinking about changes with these 3 extra days? Is there any guy that maybe helps this defense out a little more?
I mean, that linebacker situation is just a musical chairs. It's a very porous unit. I think you could see a little bit more Davion Taylor. I would play T.J. Edwards a little bit more. He's more of a physical thumper in the run game. You're sort of really limited with the personnel that you have, Mike. I mean, I might find a way to incorporate a little bit more Milton Williams in there to help with run defense. And, I mean, there's not a whole lot. I thought for the most part, especially, I mean, the Jonathan Gannon's defense, they got some timely stops against the Buccaneers. It's just the offense wasn't playing complementary football, and they weren't able to reciprocate that. And, eventually the dam will break against a guy like Tom Brady, and that's what you saw with the defense.
No, you're right. I mean, I talked about this a little bit Friday and with Moshe on Monday, which is, did Gannon make, some tweaks to the defense, adjustments, or did the Bucs take their foot off the gas a little bit?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of both. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers didn't obviously fear the Eagles' offense, and once they built a pretty significant lead, to me it felt like, being there, just sort of seeing how there were opportunities that they could have put up 40 easily if they wanted to, 45, 50 points on the Eagles, but it just seemed like they were almost toying with them a little bit, and they took to the ground game with Fournette, and they found success there. And they really were just draining the clock, for the remainder of that second half by and large. So, I mean, they could have, there was opportunities there for them to really exploit the defense if they wanted to. And they started to wear down. Leonard Fournette took some of those guys for a ride. And I would expect to see much of the same with Josh Jacobs this weekend.
All right, we're talking with Andrew DiCecco here. And, of course, football at 4. We get you ready for the Eagles and the Raiders. By the way, Eagles are 7-5. All time against the Raiders in the regular season. They've won the last 2 games. They've won 3 of their last 4 as well, and 7 of their last 10 against the Raiders. And obviously this Raiders team is a little bit different than the one that started the season, but they were pretty impressive. So give me an initial thought on the matchup with this Raiders team. And I guess you're kind of going off of what you saw. They just looked pretty good on the road against Denver. Were they different from the team we saw with John Gruden?
Well, it seems like they're playing. They played. It was a spirited first game with their interim head coach that they have there. A lot of times it can go either way, right? When you're faced with such an adverse situation, you're either going to rally or you can fold. And I initially thought that, given the circumstance that everything that was going on with the franchise, I thought that they were going to fold and that they were going to you're going to start to see things start to spiral. But instead, they rallied and they really put it was a resounding win for them. And when you see a guy like they have Henry Ruggs, and Hunter Renfrow is a really underrated slot receiver, he gets a lot of volume there. Josh Jacobs is obviously there. Darren Waller you can move him out wide. He actually began his career as a wide receiver, as an undrafted free agent with the Baltimore Ravens. He can play out wide, and you can move him anywhere. He's just going to be a matchup nightmare for whoever you face. And, I mean, they have a lot of weapons, and Derek Carr is playing pretty much at a consistent level week to week. So I mean, they're going to have their hands full, and they need to come ready. Or again, they can get out to an early lead, and you might see a lot of what you've seen the past couple of weeks.
All right, this has been kind of the theme since last week. I do a segment called Who's In and Who's Out, where I try to pick, who I think is going to make the playoffs and who I don't. Well, the NFC right now, after 5 teams, it is wide open. Minnesota and New Orleans right now are the 6th and 7th seeds. 3-2 New Orleans, 3-3 Minnesota, Andrew. At 2-4, are the Eagles legitimately in that wild card race?
They are, but they need to make significant. They need to look at themselves in the mirror you hope that they did over this, 10-day lull, and reassess and figure out what their identity is as an offense and as a defense, because they have the players, Mike. They have the players on offense to be able to stay right in the mix through the rest of the season and be right there on the cusp. I mean, I view them as a better team than the Vikings overall. I mean, they need to change their approach and figure out and become a more explosive and complete offense, balanced. And on defense, you need to figure it out, because you have a strong defensive line. You have a veteran secondary they've all played a lot of football. Mm-hmm. So they got to figure it out, because right now they don't have an identity on offense or defense.
Yeah, I think Gannon's got to say, look, I got to trust you guys a little bit more. Sorry, man, I'm going to put more on your plate, right?
Yes, yeah. It's not like they're not fielding a unit comprised of rookies or anything like that. You got your Anthony Harris's there. You have your Fletcher Cox, your Javon Hargrave. You have your Darius Slay and Steve Nelson. These guys have played a lot of football. So I think that it's time to sort of take the proverbial training wheels off of the offense, turn them loose, let them, give them a little bit more, put a little bit more on their plate. And then on offense, you have to get a little bit more creative and ask Jalen Hurts to do some things that maybe you haven't asked him to do. Play from the pocket. Do a little bit of utilize the weapons that you have and stop playing so conservative, because the screen game, I think everyone knows what's coming by now. So you're not really fooling anybody. You're not going to catch anybody by surprise. And hopefully they come out with a lot more of a inventive game plan this week.
Yeah, I know yesterday I brought up, New Orleans is 3-2, Minnesota's 3-3, Chicago's 3-3, Carolina, who you've already beaten, is 3-3, San Francisco 2-3, Atlanta, who you've already beaten, 2-3, Washington 2-4, Philadelphia 2-4. I mean, realistically, look, this isn't Philly's good or they're a Super Bowl team, but realistically, they're in the mix for one of those two playoff spots, and they have the easiest schedule statistically in football. Let's find out if this team has some adjustments and see if they can get that win. And they've won 2 road games already. To ask them to win 3 road games seems a little bit far-fetched, but we'll break that down more on Thursday when Andrew's back here for Football at 4. Andrew, good stuff, man. Appreciate it.
You got it, man. Look forward to talking to you on Thursday.
As always, Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4. DiCecco, NFL. You can follow him on Twitter and, of course, here on Football at 4 on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.